People that listen to our podcast, you know what they want to hear? They want to hear four fucking grizzly bears getting down on some bullshit. That's what they want to hear.
Welcome to the Drivers Project podcast, featuring hosts Dominic Selzy, JJ Hickle, Sam Hafertepe Jr., and myself, Daryl Turford.
The Drivers Project podcast is brought to you by Kaiser Aluminum Wheels. Be wiser, by Kaiser.
We're back with another Drivers Project podcast presented by Kaiser Wheels. And this show, we decided to do a National Sprint Car Poll ballot. I just filled out the 361 with my father, and I thought it'd be a neat idea if we did it on this show. We're just doing the 410 ballot, and today we have JJ, Sam, and Jackson with us. Dom has an early flight to catch tomorrow, so he couldn't make it. First of all, what's up, fellas? Is anyone going to PRI? I'll start with you, Jackson.
No PRI for me. I am staying home. We're getting all the Dirt Vision mobile units ready to go. We're got to go to Chili Bowl in 30 days and then roll to Florida right after that. So not a lot of time to get stuff done around here.
Sam, at one point you were telling me you were off to PRI. Is that still the case?
No, I decided against it. We have too much stuff to get caught on up at the shop, and we're just in a situation where that stuff's going to take a little bit of priority over going to PRI this year. We'd like to go for sure to see the partners that we've had for quite a while, and maybe talk to potentially new partners. But for the most part, we just really can't make that happen. And then my wife's family's Christmas is this weekend, so we're going to go do that.
JJ, you're pretty much in the process of building your 360 team. Is that keeping you home, or will you be at PRI?
Yeah, I've been working hard to get everything going there, and then I had a little surgery on a hernia, so I got that fixed. It was down and out for a while, so we're a little behind on stuff. Well, not behind, but there's lots to do. But I'm actually getting ready to go back to the West Coast here through New Year's. I'm going to go back and see Ivan and Jane Warden for a couple days, or probably a week or so, out in California, and hopefully get to catch up with a few people and have a good time out there, and then go from there back up to Washington and see all my family and friends up there. So kind of this is winter break's about to start for me, sort of, and then we get back probably the 4th or 5th of January, and then pretty much full time after that, just trying to get everything ready and figure out exactly what we need to try and do as many races as we can.
This past week, we probably had the biggest question of the offseason answered, and that is what Donnie Schatz's plans are. It's now been announced he's going to CJB. Sam, I think there's still a lot of questions. I think this is a pretty interesting combination. How do you think the 15 and Schatz will be at CJB?
It's really hard to say. I don't know who the crew guys are going to be. Is Barry going to go to that car? I don't know any of this stuff yet. So, depending on all of that, I think that's really probably, at the end of the day, it's probably for Schatz, like it's probably his kind of the X factor to how he does. I feel like you put the right people behind him, there can be some promise there. And, if Barry's behind him, I think Barry's been around long enough, and he knows a lot. So I think, with him heading the program up, I think it'll give Schatz a better opportunity than he had last year for sure.
JJ, what do you think we can expect from this team? I've seen some people put the over-under for wins at 5. I think 3 is more reasonable. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a number like 3 is probably a little more reasonable too. No matter how you slice it, a brand new team, two really good guys, but a brand new team's going to take some time to gel, and there's just not a lot of time before, I feel like the pressure and everything else with everybody on the road, it's a tough process to get rolling, no matter how good you are and how many times you guys have all done it. But if there was 2 guys that could kind of mesh right off the bat and really hit it off, I feel like this is, and Donnie's going to be extremely motivated. I don't think there's any question about that. I bet he comes in as prepared as ever. And so Man, I feel like everybody involved that appreciates our sport is rooting for him to be over that. It would be a tough deal to bet on, like over 5, but yeah, I wish him nothing but the best and hope it goes awesome.
Jackson, you're pretty in tight with the World of Outlaws scene. This was a really well kept secret. For the longest time, we'd been told he was going to big game. Then that kind of got pretty quiet, but people still were saying he's going to big game. How did this all play out?
It sounds like it came together in the last couple of weeks, really, and then whenever it was, a possibility, it sounds like it just came together pretty quickly. From what I've gathered, listening to Donnie talk, he actually did an interview with Connor Wade. It is on Dirt Vision, so for those that are Dirt Vision subscribers, go check that out. But he did say that Barry Jackson will be on the road with him full time, and I think that's super interesting. Kind of two guys, I think, personality-wise, are kind of similar people. They're both fairly serious when they're at the racetrack, and I'm kind of with you guys. I think 3 wins is probably fair to say, but I think they'll be in contention at some big races to win. But I think him and Barry will be a really good pairing. I think it's super interesting. I think they'll be good right off the get at Florida, honestly.
JJ, the other news we got was that Kerry Madsen finally made a decision on whether, or made it public, whether or not they were going high limit or World of Outlaws. They've chosen to go high limit. I know you have some friends that are close with Kerry. What went into that decision, or do you even know?
I have zero inside information on that. I really don't. There's, from the outside looking in, it's like, Tony just decided to go that direction with Rico and whatnot, so it makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure exactly what makes it, like, I feel like just seeing those guys, kind of what Kyle said last year. It's like the guys see the money and whatnot, but it'll be interesting to see what the Outlaws come out with as far as, all their numbers, and see kind of where all the chips fall. But I have zero information, nothing cool and exciting to share on the inside. And wish Kerry nothing but the best too.
Sam, how do you think the Vermeer team's going to do?
It's hard to say. I think, I think they're going to be probably a little behind where Thorson was. I think they're going to fall a little bit behind that. I think they'll have some nights where they really do run good, but I think they're, going to be a little bit behind that. They didn't muster up much on the Outlaw Tour this year. I felt like they, were kind of lackluster there. Kerry has a lot more experience than Hunter does, so I think obviously that's probably going to help them some. But on the same token, Ty Wolfgang doesn't have a ton of, crew chief experience. So I don't expect a lot of big things, but I think they're going to have some good runs. But I wanted to get back to the Schatz and Barry thing. Like, I think for Barry, I think he's going to be really excited to work with Donnie. Like, I think this is huge for Barry. I think hasn't got to work with a guy like this, or felt like he's had a guy this capable in a long, long, long time.
David, probably.
So I really think that it's going to be one of those things where Barry, you got to think, man, Barry's done this forever. And I think for him to get paired up, those two guys to get paired up, both of them, neither one of them have to prove anything to tell everybody that they're good. But I think both of them are really going to be excited to try to prove something. I think Barry's super smart, making a car have speed. I've seen it time and time again with him. And I really think that, like Jackson said, the way they both think, the way they handle themselves at the racetrack, man, I think it's going to be a really good combination. And where I'm not going to say they're going to win a ton of races, but what I do think is, I think that at every big race, they will be in contention. The biggest races, I think they will be in contention. I'm not saying they're going to win 10 races. I'm not saying they're going to win 3. I'm not even going to put a number on it. because I really think it's hard to just jump in there and start beating Gravel and beating Kofoid and beating Macedo on a consistent level. So it's going to take some time. But I think they're going to be super fast at big tracks a lot of the times. I really do. And just happens that most of our bigger races are at the bigger racetracks. So I really think Donnie's going to be, if we go back to Knoxville, I think he's going to be relevant again. We're going to see the Donnie that we're used to seeing at Knoxville too. So, I expect really big things out of him. And I truly do think that they're going to, when the money's on the line, they're going to be in contention for sure.
I do think the one thing that's interesting is what componentry they're going to choose. I mean, Donnie's obviously a lifetime J&J guy. I think there's like what do they do for motors, what they choose for components. I think it'll be pretty interesting to look at. And I think that'll also really affect things too.
I think they're already locked in on motors.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to run the same package that they've been running with Brenham. Kistler's on a maximum, I think, is what it seems to be.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be shocked if Donnie goes to a maximum.
I don't think they have a lot of time to build J&Js though. Like, to be honest, it's not like, J&J, it's not like they have cars just sitting around waiting to roll out the door. If they build something, it's going to be custom for them. And honestly, they're not like Maxim or other manufacturers where they could just whip them out real quick. I mean, it does take them a little longer to do that. They don't have as much manpower as some of these other shops do. So I think they're pretty invested in what they have, and I bet they start on the program that they have now. They might trend towards it if they have some troubles throughout the year, maybe, but I don't see them switching up from what Barry already has in place.
So the other news that just came out today actually, is Scotty Teal is going to do the World of Outlaws for the first time in his life with Greg Wheeler, which is a car that I've seen a lot in like Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio. Jackson, what do you think Scotty Teal brings to the World of Outlaws?
Yeah, I don't really know too much about the car and that car owner. Like you said, it's ran a lot up in the upper Midwest, Michigan, Wisconsin, but I don't know. I think I could see it being a little bit of a struggle early in the year for those guys kind of getting their footing, but I could also see them having some moments of success. I could see them making I don't want to put a number on it, but I could see them having a couple good qualifying well some nights at certain tracks and having some good runs, but I think on bigger tracks, it could be a little bit of a struggle for those guys building a notebook. And I mean, it's like any team going on the road for the first time. It's usually getting your ass kicked for a little bit, building a notebook. But I think it's super interesting. I think a guy like Scotty being on the road will be fun. Trying to build up another good rookie class, I think, is important for the Outlaws. So no, it'll be interesting for sure.
JJ, you and Scotty keep replacing each other in that 50 that 50 car, it seems like. What do you know about Scotty, and what do you think he's going to do this year?
Yeah, I mean, from everything I can see, he's really smart. Like, he knows how to get his car pretty good a lot of the time on certain types of racetracks. I feel like there's going to be a lot of inconsistencies, but I do feel like when they roll through the Wisconsin area, he's going to probably be pretty damn good. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a couple of dashes and have some really good weeks when they get to tracks. And I mean, Scotty's well traveled. Like, he ran the All-Star Tour and he's been to a lot of places. He's won races in Ohio, and he's won a lot of 410 sprint car races. And so I think that they'll definitely have some moments that surprise a lot of people, but it's just consistency to race against those guys at that level that have been to these tracks a lot of times is going to be tough when they get kind of out of their wheelhouse. But man, I think Scotty's a pretty talented guy, and I know Greg a little bit, and I really like him, and it's kind of a fun pairing, and it's good to see some more rookies that are like, guys that have some experience that can go out on the tour and do some good.
Sam, what are your thoughts on Scotty joining the tour, and what do you think their expectations should be?
I think Scotty's a pretty good wheel guy. I mean, I think with the team, there's a lot of unknowns for me. I don't know much about their team. I don't know, equipment wise, how many motors they have, what motor brands they have, like things like that. Um, it's one thing to race, at a local, regional type level, and then to bring your stuff to the national level, like especially right out of the gate, your first race being at Volusia. That place is all about speed, and um, I think they will struggle at, like Jackson said, at some of the bigger places for sure, because that's your program is basically, how well your program is built shows up on those big places pretty well. I do think he's going to have some moments of greatness. I think he's going to do really well at the places he knows that he's been to. I think those are going to be some of their stronger finishes. Um, and then the other thing that we don't really know is kind of the makeup of their team. Like, who's the crew chief? Is Scotty making the calls? Or do they have a whole other guy making calls and Scotty's just sitting back? I think the best thing for Scotty, because I feel like he's more of a hands-on guy, is probably making his own calls, but that also leads to a tougher road as well. So just depending how they handle their whole situation, I think that has a lot to say with how they run night in and night out and their consistencies. I think what they have to offer, Scotty's got some experience. The team doesn't have a lot of major traveling experience, so I think that's where they're going to have some hiccups along the way. And then Scotty probably I'm assuming Scotty's going to be the guy kind of handling most of this stuff. So Scotty trying to handle the logistics and drive and crew chief and make calls, and I think that's going to be overwhelming for them at some point, and that just makes it difficult at that level. And the only reason I know about this is because that's kind of how I did it for a long time. So I know kind of the challenges that he's going to be up against. Doesn't mean he can't perform at that level by any stretch of the imagination. It's just going to be difficult, and hopefully they can stick it out the whole year and make some traction and keep it going, because that's usually teams that start off like this. It's either a sink or swim type deal, and hopefully, they keep, they keep a little bit of, confidence and they keep I guess a good vision about, have realistic goals in mind so they can have some longevity out there. I think that's what they really need to focus on.
It's kind of funny having a guy like Scotty on tour, because there's kind of an ongoing joke with some people with the Outlaws that him and I are long lost twin brothers. And actually, this past year at Plymouth, the night after the high limit race at 141, he like ran fifth or something. And I'm sitting in the pits with a Dirt Vision like crew shirt on, and some guy comes up to me, he's like, "Hey man, like good run last night. Like you in that 51 car, like are really like gelling well." And I'm like thinking to myself, like, I was like, holy shit, this guy thinks I'm fucking Scotty Thiel. So I've like played along with him. I'm like, yeah, man, it was great. Like me and this team, like we're really getting along well. It was
so
good to have a good
awesome.
run. I'm just hoping we can like run good tonight. And I'm just like thinking, I'm like, dude, I'm in a Dirt Vision shirt. Like I was like, whatever, man. It's kind of funny.
I kind of actually want you to elaborate a little, Sam. What are the difficulties you think that people don't realize they're going to face when they go on the Outlaw Tour that they inevitably do face that might surprise people?
Yeah, I just think it really has to do with the makeup of the team, but I'm assuming he's probably going to be a lot of the decision making there. And not saying he doesn't know how to make the right decisions, but when you're the decision maker and then you're the driver and you got to make sure your guys are doing what they're supposed to do, and there's so many variables there. Then you know what happens is you're not watching the track as much as you should be when when qualifying's going on, or something gets looked over. The nights that are good, they're good. They're easy nights. It's the nights that are hard and trying to maybe come from behind. I think those are the hardships, and everybody, and man, it's so easy to get down on yourself out there. There's so many good race cars. I mean, you could go through a stretch of, like where you're running terrible for several weeks on end, and maybe you're not slow, just not everything's all together. I think their number one struggle is going to be qualifying. I think they're going to struggle heavily in qualifying a lot of the year. And I think that's really going to put them far behind the 8 ball. And then I think at some point they're going to start figuring that out and getting better. But then they're probably not going to race good. And, because usually it happens like this. It's happened like this to me. We'd be racing good, but we wouldn't be qualifying good. And then all of a sudden you get your qualifying down pretty good. And then you're not racing as good as you have been, but you got track position. So, it kind of holds you up front for a while. I think in their situation, that's some of the things they're going to struggle with. And I think it's just so hard that you're going up against teams that do this numerous years and years and years and years in a row. And you're starting all new stuff, new driver, new team. Man, that's tough. I don't care who it is. I mean, look at a guy like Donnie Schatz, man. That should tell you everything you need to know. Probably the oldest veteran we have left out here racing on a national level, and struggled with one of the most financially backed teams that you could possibly have. So if the pieces aren't in place and all the right people aren't in place, man, it sure does make for a tough time. Man, just something as simple as getting to some racetrack they've never been to before, getting lost, or, I know guys that have drive from Tulsa to Dallas and been there 100 times to get lost on the way home.
Yeah,
guys have done that.
Yep.
And, I just, I don't know, man, there's so many variables. And I hope they do a damn good job, and I hope the owner sticks it out, and keeps on putting money forth to make this happen. Cause we just need more and more teams out there. And I think, it gets a better fan base when we have that. I don't know. Like, I think they're capable. I think Scotty's capable. I just think he really needs, they're going to come to a situation where the personnel that they have and things like that is depending on, okay, well, realistically, how do we want to run? And that really determines, okay, do we hire a higher-end crew chief if we can? Do we, what weight are we putting on Scotty's shoulders? That's what all these teams really, that's what they thrive on. Like after the interview we had with Kyle Larson, it made me realize a lot of things. People can say, oh, well, Kyle's dumb because he doesn't know anything about the car. No, he's really actually smart because he knows, like, that's not his strong suit. So, hey, man, I know the best thing for us to do is to have this guy over here that knows what he's doing to work on the race car, and then I need to just focus on my driving. There's not very many drivers that just say, that's what we need to do. That's a smart thing. Like, I could guarantee you, almost every driver is way more hands-on than what Kyle is. But he's smart in a sense because he knows that's not his strong suit. Even if he tried to learn it, he knows it's not his strong suit. Man, I'm going to just put all my trust into this. And I think in Scotty's position, I don't think he's going to have that ability to just go, oh yeah, we're going to hire this crew chief and just let him put all his thought into it. It's probably going to be a lot to do with what Scotty wants to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's probably just the way they're going to handle it. And I think that's when you're trying to compete at the highest levels, that's very, very hard to do. Like I say, the good nights are easy and the hard nights are way harder.
I think looking at the schedule the way it is, like we all can agree that when they get to the North Dakota, Wisconsin, Minnesota races, that should be their best time of the year. But, sandwiched in between those races, we have Attica, Sharon, Knoxville, Lincoln, Williams Grove, and then after we go up to that Midwest area, we come back and go to Wilmot, where I think that'll be one of the tracks where he should be running up front. But then you go Attica, Kings Royal, Ohsweken, Weedsport, back to Williams Grove. I think that's could be the pretty trying part of their season where we'll, kind of find out what the team is really all about. I hope the struggles aren't that bad, but I could see like those being the trying parts of the season. Those are some pretty tricky racetracks kind of back to back to back. and tough fields to race against too.
Well, that's enough with the updates. Let's get into what we decided this show would be about, and that's the 410 pull. Basically, JJ, myself, Sam, Jackson, and Dom did our votes for the top 15 drivers in the country, and we're going to go through them from 15th to 1st. But we had a pile of debate today on 15. So I'm going to start by telling people that we had Tanner Thorson 15th. But there was a lot of debate specifically about Bill Baylog, who received votes from 2 guys. I think that's probably the main one we debate on. Obviously, I have the president of the Bill Baylog fan club here. He just missed the top 15, JJ. Do you think that was right, or do you think we got that wrong?
Statistically, I'm really not totally sure, but emotionally, it's damn wrong. Just Bill Baylog belongs in the top 15, and I'll die on that hill. I don't have any badass stats or anything to back it up. I thought that he was strong all year long, and his body of work, I thought at least got him an honorable mention. Got him close.
Sam, I think you felt pretty strongly that he should be in the top 15, or you felt there were certainly people above him that shouldn't have been. What was your feelings on Bill?
I mean, like, Bill was a bubble guy for me. Like, when we're talking about 15. I still had Schatz ahead of him. Schatz was my 15th guy. Because we can't discredit Donnie Schatz. Like, we just can't, He might not have had like the strong runs that like Bill had. Bill had a lot of really strong runs throughout the year. He really did. And I guess maybe why we think he should be top 15 is because we pull for him so much. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like JJ said, it's an emotional type thing. And like you said, oh man, he won 3 races this year. Well, hell yeah, that's badass. Like, most guys go their whole career never winning 3 races, so, to not discredit that, but we had Thorson ahead of him, and I don't know how we'd have Thorson ahead of him. Not to say Thorson didn't have a good year. He made huge improvements from last year. Kind of, when we're talking to Zeb Wise, Zeb had like Thorson at 20, and that's kind of where I had him too, even after his huge improvement of last year. But I still feel like Bill would be ahead of him, but maybe not necessarily, 15th, maybe 16th. I mean, man, there's so many guys that, we talk about, like a Dietrich or a Sanders, or, like, in one of the things that I said on our group chat today was, it's hard to put a guy that doesn't travel ahead of a guy that does travel, because guys that do travel, if you took them over a series of 10 different races against the guy that doesn't normally travel as much, even the lesser, whatever would be considered the lesser outlaw guy or the lesser high limit guy, would still outrun the guy that doesn't travel in those 10 races. So that's why you see most of my picks always big time travelers.
Jackson, do you think we got it right or wrong?
Well, I had Baylog at 15 on my list. You look at like his body of work. He won 3 races. Like I think I said in the group chat. He won 3 races on 3 completely different surfaces and completely different racetracks. He beat Buddy at Huset's, and that's worth something in my opinion. And his run at the National Open was pretty incredible too. But I think the argument could be made just because Bill he's really inconsistent. Like, he was I felt like he was either running up front or just a non-factor at all, and kind of just really bad, So I thought his high spots were really high, but I think the low spots were pretty low for that team. But I think he's a bubble guy for sure.
I was the guy pushing back against Bill Balog in the top 15. And my reason, it has a lot to do with what Jackson did. Like when it was mostly Zeb and I debating it. And at one point, Zeb asked me, well, who would you rather in a season? And I started thinking about Bill's season, and I'm like, Donnie Schatz was struggling like crazy, and Donnie Schatz beat him by about 100 points. And I started to look in, well, why did Donnie Schatz beat him by 100 points? The problem is, Bill had 17 finishes of 20th or worse. I think when you guys think of Bill Balog, I think you think of Bill Balog when he's running good. That Bill Balog's a top 15. That's Bill Balog's a top 10, arguably, when Bill's on. But I think people keep bringing up the body of work. The body of work to me is that he's too inconsistent. Yes, the highs are high, and I think you can't say enough about his run at Huset's, his run at the National Open. Jesus, one more spot to those races, and we're having a whole different conversation. But I do think the consistency needs to be addressed because you're just never going to be a good points runner if you're dropping out of you might not even be dropping out of the races. You can't have 20% of your races be 20th or worse and compete.
But
at
I'll
the
tell you what
highest
that
level.
is. I'll tell you exactly what that is.
It doesn't.
And I know that's
matter,
what we're
though.
going off of, but that's Bill racing for money and knowing, okay, hey guys, we're not even going to crack the top 15 tonight. We're probably going to roll it in the trailer and not burn up tires and burn up equipment. Those are those nights where that happens. So like, just say, because that's how I used to race back in the day. Like I knew our situation and I knew, okay, hey, financially, it doesn't make sense just to ride out here and run 17th instead of 23rd tonight. The pay was going to be the same in my eyes. So, and I think that's the way he does a lot of his stuff. And for that reason, if you look at his stats, though, he's got more top 10s, more top 5s, and more wins than Donnie Schatz this year and still 112 points behind him. So, like I say, in everybody's eyes, Donnie had a really terrible year, but and we think that Balog had a pretty decent year. And numbers wise, if we're not looking at, top 20 finishes or whatever, we're looking at, the grand scheme of things. Okay, how fast is Bill Balog in these moments? And then if we took out these races where he just said, okay, well, I was probably going to run 16th or 17th that night, and I thought better of it and just pulled in because, I'm trying to save money, I would think, yeah, he had a better year than Schatz.
But yeah, if you're telling me though that he's running 16th or 17th, that's still making him irrelevant to me. Like that's still like an irrelevant night, 20% of your nights.
Yeah,
And
but
I
if
think
he
to be
does
in the
that,
top,
if he does that, he passes Schatz and points, is what I'm saying. That's the
okay, I
difference.
didn't have shots in my top 15. I don't think anyone else did.
I
don't
did.
think that's the.
I had him 15.
Yeah,
Sam
you
had him
had
based
him.
on
You said
his,
that, but no one else did.
career body of work, though. You're like, we had him because he's Donnie Schatz, bro. It's like, I get it. I get it. That's why
right.
I
That's
had
right.
Bill Balog up even further because I'm president of the fan club, dude.
I think it's even more impressive, too, that a guy that works on his own stuff and is his own crew chief has that much success on the Outlaw Tour and, winning at or being good at all these crown jewel races. Because I don't care what anyone says. You can't full time be your own crew chief and drive the car and do it at the highest. I mean, you can do it at the highest level, but you're never going to, I don't think a guy is going to win a championship being his own crew chief.
Yeah, that's where all the inconsistencies are. That's exactly where it's at.
He's doing it way more on his own.
I would also say that isn't that what Tanner Thorson's doing?
I think Reitzel's
going to do it. But these
year.
Teams, I will say this: Balog's doing that with way less help too.
One crew guy.
Absolutely.
He has one crew guy full time.
Like these other teams, they've got full teams and they have guys that know every exact thing to do. Yeah, Reitzel might be making the calls and Thorson might be making the calls. And Thorson's more of a hands-on guy anyway, but all these team members are the ones, actually like doing the work. I would think that, Thorson probably does a little more than what Reitzel does physically to the race car. And Baylog probably does more than both of those guys do. I would
Bill
say.
works his ass off, dude.
Bill does
It's
as much as the tire guys. But what's
for
crazy
sure.
about Bill's, like, what's his bread and butter?
I feel like it's short
He's
track.
so good on every,
Yeah,
like,
but now it's
his wins are
deeper
such
than that.
it's
It's
but
deeper
all
than
of
that,
it, man.
but I
It's-
think he has like a literal top 5
He's
elite
fast
car on the
everywhere.
short tracks. That's why I say the short tracks. Like, he goes to a short track, I put his program up against anyone, he's going to do just fine.
I think he's maxed out on points position, though. I think that's the best he's going to do unless
for sure.
he changes the format of the amount of crew guys they have and the amount of responsibilities that he has to control. I think until he does that, he's maxed out on points position.
And if you look at all the racetracks at the Crown Jewels, he ran second at the National Open. He won it. Well, he ran second to Buddy on the big nights, but won a prelim night at Houston's. And he's made the Knoxville Nationals 2 years in a row, which is pretty impressive. So it's
And
definitely
he's made it
trending.
solidly.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
both
he made
nights
it.
he was
yeah,
in,
he
no
was the
problem.
lock-in for both times.
But I'd say that's actually Tanner. Like, if I had to pick a drawback on Tanner, it's I'd like to see him do better in the big money races. But so we had, yeah,
For sure. And that's why he struggles at the big races, is because that's a lot of the game.
but I do think he got his car to where he's probably like a top 3 to 4 handling car at high limit by the end of the year, I'd say.
Yeah, by the end of the year, he was right there. No doubt about it.
And I wouldn't be surprised if like the main focus of the offseason was upgrading the engine program.
Well, they
So-
sold one, so I'm assuming they're upgrading something.
So at 14, we have a guy who we just said that Sam put shots in on his body of work over his lifetime. I feel like at 14, I kind of feel like we did the same thing with Tyler Courtney. He had 2 wins this year, and obviously his season was cut short at Eldora. He did have the $25,000 to win show at Lucas Oil, and he won a thriller over Corey Day at Knoxville. But in at 14, we have Tyler Courtney. JJ, what do you think of Courtney in at 14?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many races he actually ran this year, but Tyler Courtney's top tier when he's out there for sure. I'd rather see him on the track than in the booth. I hope he gets better for next year for sure. But like, I mean, when he was the speed he had at the beginning of the year, I thought he was well on his way to being, top 10, top 15 type of season. But then after he got hurt, it's hard to really. It's just hard because you haven't seen him race in 6 months, or however long it's been. He didn't race the second half of the season, so it's kind of hard to rate him up there with these guys that we've seen race all year. So it's kind of he's a tough one to figure out where to put.
Yeah, he raced 41 races.
It's still a lot.
Yeah, he had 41 races and 2 national level wins, one for 25,000. I think the other just general feeling is like, if you have the biggest race of the year at a track nobody goes to, he's running top 15. I think that's a fair assessment. Sam, what are your thoughts on Courtney at 14?
Yeah, I mean, I had him higher up than that. Just, like, I know we're, my thoughts of when we did this list is, who do you think the top 15 are? Not, oh, hey, well, they ran this in points this year. Like I my thoughts on it is, who are the top 15 racers right now if we go to a racetrack? That's the way I did my list. So I had him at like number 7. But I mean, if we're talking about the body of work this year, I mean, I don't even think he's in the top 15 because, he's absent, right? But based upon who's the top 15 right now, I had him at 7 because I think that's where he stacks up amongst the heaviest hitters. If we're all healthy and we all go to the racetrack right now, I feel like he's the 7th place guy on the list of all the guys that we have. So, I really hope he recovers well next year. Those are some heavy injuries for any guy to endure and to have. And And that's obviously that's not his first injury. So he's like I feel like I hope he recovers good. I hope the eyes aren't a big issue for him. There's so many variables that we don't know. I mean, he's the only person that knows how ready he's going to be, and how those injuries will impact his career going forward. But I think he's got the it factor that the main guys in this sport have. He's got something about that makes him special. Maybe he's not Larson, maybe he's not Gravel or Rico, but he's like just a little bit behind those guys. And I think, the longevity of staying out there, I think eventually like his time will come, but he's got to stay healthy. And I like to see what he looks like coming back. Hopefully he comes back with a vengeance and can show some speed right off the bat.
Jackson, Tyler at 14. Did we get that right?
I didn't have him on my list just because of he didn't rate, he only ran half the season, but I mean, I could see the argument why. I mean, he was a championship contender at the time when he got hurt. So, and I mean, Tyler's a great race car driver. I think he's good on all types of racetracks. The small tracks he's really good at. He's good at Knoxville. Obviously, he's really good at Eldora. But I'm kind of just what Sam said. I just hope he recovers well. Like, no one really knows how he feels really except for him, but he seems pretty adamant that he's going to race at Volusia in February. So I think we'll find out a lot about, and he will find out a lot about if he's really ready. And I just hope that he can come back and be the same Tyler Courtney that he was.
When Tom Schmade did this poll, I asked him about like what the idea and the origination, and what he told me about the poll is he wanted it to be so that if an alien basically came in from another planet, came down and landed, they'd have an accurate reflection of that season. So to me, I always try, when I do the list, I try to do the best 15 guys that season, but I also did leave it open because I do want other interpretations of it like Sam had. But for that reason, Tyler did not make my list, but I certainly have no complaints with him in at 14. At 13, we have Sheldon Haudenschild. He had 72 starts, 4 wins, and he picked up the National Open in about the last way I ever thought he'd win the National Open, but he pulled it off. Jackson, that was a pretty crazy night, a pretty badass race. Did we get Sheldon right at 13?
I think so. It wasn't the best season for Sheldon and as far as wins go, but I felt like as far as consistency and finishing races, this was his best year. He rolled it in the trailer on all fours more times than I felt like he was more of a win it or wear it type of guy. The first couple years I was out here on the road, but he finished a lot more races. He was able to win with 2 different crew chiefs, with Ripper obviously to start for most of the year, and then was able to pick up a win with Kyle Pruitt too, and they were pretty good. So I think that's right. I think next year we'll look to see Sheldon move up the list. Honestly, I honestly think Sheldon is going to have a big year next year on the Outlaw Tour and contend for a lot of wins.
JJ, what are your thoughts on Sheldon at 13? Our range was pretty consistent with him, as 9 through 14th in our poll.
Yeah, I think it's pretty spot on. I mean, I think that even he would probably agree with it. It's about where he's going to win races. But like Jackson said, it's just his consistency level was definitely better. But I feel like it's kind of a catch-22 because with that comes a few less wins, and he's not quite as exciting or like, the typical Sheldon to watch. But as far as end of the day, bottom line, it's probably better for everybody involved when he's, a little bit more calculated and less wild.
Sam, so often we see drivers that race like Sheldon, they're not able to make that change. If a guy's a throttler, he's a throttler. Very rarely do we see that happen. How impressive is it that Sheldon was able to make the change and really do it in one season from right off the bat?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you, like you could look at a guy like Kerry Madsen. He's been a gasser his whole life. He's never really changed that. He's been the same, whether, if he wrecks 10 times a year because he's driving this style, like I don't feel like it's ever affected what he feels like to do going forward. And I feel like a guy like Hod, we were like, okay, well, his dad raced that same style his whole career. And you think, well, Sheldon's just going to follow suit. And honestly, this year, we noticed it from pretty early on this year. And then it just kept being a trend where he was, wasn't tearing shit up, and he wasn't, doing normal hot and chilled things, running the hot line, we didn't see that as much this year, and yeah, he only had 4 wins compared to like other years where he'd have around 8 or so. So yeah, maybe that doesn't look as good, but the body of work that he put out there this year was honestly very impressive to me. And then to win with the new crew chief at the end of the year, like, dude, that's pretty awesome for him to do that. Like, it's not, they're going to be doing totally different things than what he was doing. I think they switched shock brands, probably a whole different package, and he was still able to do some good. So, and I'm with Jackson. Dude, they're about to get on with a team that has Morrison Motors. They're going to be a different brand of race car. I'll tell, or maybe they won't be on a different brand of race car. I don't really know that answer. But what I will say is, I think their motor program is about to get a hell of a lot better than what they had. Not to say their motor program was bad, but there aren't a lot of better engine builders than Morrison out there. And I think with them getting that, and both of them really, like, just think about the fire they both have in them right now, and going to the new team. Like, I think they're going to be insanely fast this year. I mean, I don't think they're going to be like, Gravel and Rico and Macedo, or Gravel, Kofoid and Macedo. But I think they're going to be right behind that. And I think we will see a little bit of the old Sheldon come out this year.
I could see a 4th in points run for them, or at least competing in 4th in points with Donnie and
sure.
Schuhart and those guys.
So you're going to find that as we keep going through this list, there's a few wild cards in the list. And the first wild card we have on the list is Corey Day at 12. With Corey Day, he had 33 wins according to Sprint Car, 33 races according to Sprint Car Ratings.com, 7 wins. He had 6 high limit wins, 1 World of Outlaw win, the 25,000 to win opener at Vegas, and then he three-peated at Gold Cup for $100,000. JJ, I'm doing that for you. I think just a stellar season. I think probably, JJ, is it fair to say we just had him a little low just for not running a full season?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think everybody would agree that Corey Day's top 5, probably be top 3 on this list if he was just to race full-time sprint cars only next year, but that's not the case right now. And he's kind of, pretty damn committed to the NASCAR thing. And so we only got about a half of a schedule from him. So I feel like that's kind of dropped him down the list. But I'll tell you what, like, that season that you just described there would be an awesome career for a lot of people. And that'd be a career season for a ton of guys. So Corey Day is a spectacular talent. And I just think, we want to see more, like, we just would love to see him race more, but that's probably the only reason he's not up a lot higher, is just didn't race more.
So that brings up the obvious question, Sam. Where do you think Corey would have slotted in had he raced a full season?
Yeah, top 4. It'd be top 4 for sure. Because you got to add Larson to the mix too. So, Larson probably be number 1, and then I would say, I think Corey would slot in top 4, because Corey still has a tendency of kind of getting in some shit. Like, he's got that aggression about him where he's going to put himself in some bad situations and maybe not come out on top. But I would say he'd be top 4. Let's face it, when you have Kyle Larson come on our podcast last week and say, when I race with him, he's the only guy that looks like me racing. He goes, oh, that looks like something I would do. Dude, that's like probably the ultimate compliment you could probably get as a racer racing sprint cars from Kyle Larson. So if Kyle Larson knows, then obviously that guy's, one of the top guys for sure.
Jackson, what are your thoughts on Corey Day at 12?
I mean, I agree. He'd be top 5 if he ran a full season. He's lights out at Gold Cup, Tulare, and I think something really underrated about Corey Day is he's badass at Knoxville. He's won 2 years in a row in the June race, and as long as he's able to continue running the Knoxville Nationals, I really think he's going to win one here in the next couple of years. Like he's pretty damn good at Knoxville. So I think he's fine where he's at. I think I'm with everybody else. He'd be top 3, top 5 if he got a full season in him, but losing him to the pavement stuff. So it's kind of unfortunate.
JJ, I'll throw in an extra question here. If he could run the Gold Cup every year, how many would he win a row? Would he get stopped this year, or how many do you think he could go? Because I feel like
there's nothing that shows that he's slowing down as far as winning at Chico. His confidence levels through the roof at Chico, and he backs it up every time he goes against, the best guys that he can be racing with. So it's just, I feel like he's only getting better. And then if he's racing sprint cars full time, I guess the only thing would be if they were to get onto a different package that maybe didn't, it would have to be something weird, man, because that kid's going to be phenomenally good. And like, he's only going to get better and more calculated and like, manage these races better and better for probably the next decade before he's just hopefully he still races dirt cars, 30, 40 times a year through all this NASCAR.
Well,
through
with
this
what
phase
he's
of his
on,
life,
he
he's
should
just a rebellious dirt racer.
Well, with what he's doing, he should be on pace to run about as many times as Larson is. I mean, he's not going to have any restrictions.
Their race number this year is within 1, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's just the scheduling aspect of it. Like usually Larson can't run Gold Cup because of playoffs and the travel. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how it all plays out with that race and Knoxville and all that too.
No nationals this
but
year.
I don't think you can say, well, how many Gold Cups could he win in a row? Because we got 3, right?
13, Daryl.
But man, think about how many things have to go right for you to win in a night on a big race like that, right? So it would take one small misfortune along the way for him to lose one. That's what I'm thinking. Like, so the chances of him to win another one are, to me, I'm going to say he's less likely to win than he's likely to win. That's what I would say. So,
and Gold Cup's a 2-day accumulated deal, isn't it? Like they split the field.
It's not going to be anymore.
Oh, okay.
I've gathered that they're not going to do the split field anymore because they have to try really hard to get it to the split field to get enough cars for that. So,
and it was pretty weak. I mean, like no offense, but it was lighter fields on each side. But even then, that's still another night where you could have an engine failure or something, and then it's going to be a lot harder to win from the back. So it's just, he puts himself in position extremely well, and then just execution's like, you guys heard him talk about Gold Cup on the show. It was like he doesn't plan on losing anytime soon at Chico.
It's insane, like how crazy he can drive, how much harder he can drive in on the cushion at Chico than anybody else. It's insane.
So the next guy on our list doesn't have a pile of wins, but he racked up a pretty good season. That was Logan Schuchart. We have him in at 11. He had 74 starts, 2 wins, 34 top 5s, 59 top 10s, and World of Outlaw wins at I-55 and Attica Raceway Park. So like I say, not big win numbers, Jackson, but man, you saw him night in, night out. Logan was pretty tough and didn't have a lot of weaknesses.
Yeah, he started out really strong, and I thought he finished really strong. I think this is pretty fair. I think when I was on last time when we did the Outlaw review, I think I said he was like my biggest disappointment of the year, but just because the winds weren't there. Like they came out of the gate and they were fast. Like I really thought they were going to win 6-7 races, but 6-7. They were going to win a handful of races, and but I definitely think there's big room for improvement this next year. I think we'll see him climb up the list next year. I think he's going to win five or so races next year, and I think they'll be a contender.
Sam, I think you think a lot of Logan in terms of how they get their race car and stuff like that. Are you surprised he's not higher?
No, I'm not surprised he's not higher because I think he took the leap to try to lessen his load and bring a crew chief in, and I don't think they gelled very well, to be honest. That's why they ran, kind of how they ran. So I think he made a good move to move that guy out and go a different route because, the results weren't there. They've had better years in the past, and to be honest, I think, I think he knows what he needs to do. He's starting to be that guy, though, that will always be in the top 10 every night, it seems like. He's becoming that guy that's always there. So no matter how they start the night off or whatever, they salvage a night almost every night. So I think that's a positive thing I see with him. I do think that them kind of moving Kyle Pruitt out is going to better them because I think he does better without that. Not to be anything negative on Kyle Pruitt, I just think Logan works better without that guy there. So I think that that's what they need to go back to doing. I think that's what they're going to do, and I think they're going to be a lot more successful next year.
I was pretty surprised by that, honestly. I thought him having a crew chief would better him and help him win more races, which I'm honestly pretty shocked that it was the exact opposite.
JJ, what do you think we should expect for Logan next year?
Man, I would hope that he kind of gets back to what he was, back to his own thing there. And there was a point where Logan was a top 3 outlaw contender. And I will say, whenever I watch him, between him and Carson, he's got to be passing more cars than anybody on any given night. He gets his car so good come feature time. So I do feel like there's a ton of potential if they just kind of clean up a little bit here and a little bit there. That I mean, it's very obvious that Logan knows how to get it done and can compete at a high level night in and night out. It's just kind of getting his car where he needs it to be. And I feel like, I feel like he's just a tick away, and hopefully they kind of figure that out when he gets back to doing his own thing this year. And if that happens, I feel like he'll be back to where he was, kind of at least knocking on the door of the top 3 with the Outlaws and definitely racing in the top 5 again.
At number 10, we have a guy that had a pretty quiet and consistent season, and that's pretty much what we've come to expect of him now. We have Brent Marks at number 10. He ran 77 races this year, had 7 wins, 24 top 5s, 52 top 10s, 5 high limit feature wins, including the $20,000 score at Port Royal in the Weikert opener. Sam, Brent Marks is just solid.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a super smart guy. I think his program is and they switched chassis this year too. So, a lot of people don't remember that they did that, but they did switch chassis this year. I think it took him a while to figure it out. If you remember, he started off the year really shitty, and I think they got it together towards the end of last year and really started coming on strong. And I think that kind of bodes well for them going into next year. I think they're going to be pretty serious contender come next year. Sweet's going to be out of the mix. So, I know you got Courtney coming back, but, I'm going to put, I mean, obviously, our favorite to win it is going to be Rico, but I'm going to put him right in the mix with Reitzel, with that group of guys there. I think he's going to be there. I think he's going to be better than Courtney next year. And I think him and Reitzel are going to be like trading spots wherever they're at. That's what I truly think.
Jackson, There was a time when Brent Marks seemed like he was at the top of the world. Then he kind of fell off. Now he seems to be back on the rise. As Sam said, he changed cars. He also changed. He also stopped working with his crew chief that he had last year. Where do you think Brent Marks goes from here?
Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, having a whole new crew going into next year, and he actually announced today that he was going to be working with CSI next year. So I don't really know what that's going to look like, but I could see similar stats to this year. 5-ish wins. Obviously he's going to be a contender at Port Royal and all those tracks up that way. I feel like on the bigger tracks where he seems to succeed more. But I think I could see him slotting in like that 4th or 5th in points with high limit, behind Rico and Reitzel and Courtney there. But he's silently always there, and he's gonna win his fair amount of races. But he kind of fell off a little bit at Eldora, like you said, but I could definitely see him getting. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him running back up front at Eldora and all the crown jewel races.
JJ, you were talking about Marks before we went on. You were talking about how he's just a really, really quiet guy, almost a silent assassin. Is he someone we forget about and maybe don't appreciate enough?
I think so. I mean, even when he wins, he just does it so quietly and methodically. I feel like he's just, I feel like he kind of just flies under the radar, and I think that's sort of his style, and he likes it that way. And going into this next year, it's going to be hard to improve on the year he just had. I mean, he had a really, really strong year, and an improvement on that would just be huge. I mean, it's like they're a top 5 kind of solid team right now. And I feel like I hope they have a good season. He's got a couple of guys that I've worked with on his crew this year, a couple of good guys. So I'm rooting for him. I've always been a Brent Marks fan, but I've never heard him really say anything besides whatever he says in victory lane or on the podium. I feel like he's kind of one of those guys in our sport that just keeps to himself and goes about his business and really just quietly takes care of business better than a lot of people. And he's really cleaning up, like, California this year. He had an interview. He's like, I realize we have to get better at these types of places to really evolve and up our game. And I feel like he, as much as he doesn't like being on those types of surfaces, I do see improvement every time they go out there. I feel like he's absolutely getting more and more comfortable, at least being uncomfortable.
He won Douglas County this year, and that's like not a Brent Marks style racetrack either, which is pretty impressive.
That's all.
Number 9, we have another wild card, and that would be our guest from last week, Kyle Larson. We had him all over the place. We had him as high as 3, and some people didn't have him on their list, obviously, because he didn't race full season. He raced 32 times, according to Sprint Car Ratings, 9 wins, 2 high limit, 4 World of Outlaw feature wins. The biggest one was the 100,000 Jokers jackpot at Eldora. To me, what's interesting about Larson, us having him at 9, is this has been the same situation for Kyle as it has been all the time. And the last time we did a ranking, we had Kyle at 2. JJ, do you think it's the lack of big wins other than the Jokers race that maybe makes us think less of Kyle's season?
I think that Kyle set such a bar the year that he ran all the sprint car stuff. Daryl, you know the exact year, but that it's just, any year that he doesn't win 40 or 50 races, you're like, man, what's wrong with Kyle? I mean, anytime he's not winning basically 1 out of 2, people are like, oh, Kyle's falling off or whatever. And I just think that the bar that he sets so insane, and the competition in sprint car racing is still really good. And I don't think he's not number 1 as far as like talent and just ability to drive these cars go. I mean, gravel, I think gravel's at the top of his game right now, and they challenge each other really well. But in general, I think it's just a matter of we just didn't get to see him run all the crown jewel races and run all the high limit stuff like we normally would. Like he didn't even get to do the whole midweek thing this year, I don't believe. So it's like you didn't get to see him race for a championship. And I just feel like for all those reasons is kind of why he's not up higher, because it's honestly weird to make any sort of a list and not have the guy that we all consider the best at the top of the list.
Sam, what are your thoughts on his placement and what JJ just said?
I mean, to be honest, his numbers weren't as good as they normally are. You know, being realistic, like if he's going to a race, a big race, I don't think he's beating Gravel or Rico right now. To be honest, I don't, and that's why I put him at number 4 because of that reason. That's truly what I think, is that he's definitely, there's no doubt that, you know, he's one of the guys all the time. But if you ask me, I think that he just didn't have the numbers he usually has. Like he's at the bigger events, he hasn't been the guy. And other years he has been, and this year he wasn't. Was he still fast? Yeah, he was still fast, but he wasn't like he was last year or the year before that. So for that reason, that's why I have him at 4. Usually I would have him probably at like 2, right below Gravel.
Jackson, your thoughts on Kyle?
He gets penalized because of his basketball skills. Now, I think it's fine. Like, I think.
So how bad is he playing basketball?
Horrible, awful.
Like he can't dribble?
Like one of the worst I've ever seen.
That's so funny.
I don't know. How do you classify the worst you've ever seen? Like, what's it look like?
Dude, it was so bad. He just the way he shoots is.
Oh no! Yeah, he did say he catches a lot of shit for shooting with 2 hands.
No,
like
it's ugly. It's ugly. No, I mean, like you said, a down year for Kyle, but you know he's always going to be in contention. He's always going to be there. So, but I think fairly it was worth him dropping a few spots just because based on the year that he had.
Okay, so we have another wild card in at number 8 too, and holy shit, did this guy have a season? We have Ryan Timms in at number 8, won the Knoxville Nationals. Let me give you his total numbers: 69 races, 15 wins, 26 top 10s, or 26 top 5s, 38 top 10s. Won the Tuscarora 50 for $58,000. And when he won the Tuscarora 50 and when he won Knoxville, it was not even close. Those were ass stomping. Sam, maybe some people might think Ryan Timms should be higher just based on the Knoxville Nationals. What do you think?
Well, I actually had him lower. I had him 14 on my list. And the reason I did was because, you know, he won, you know, like when we go to these big races, like obviously he won Port and he won the Nationals. But like the first 2 nights at Port, he was a non-factor. So like for me, yeah, he won a lot of races throughout the year, but the big races, you know, obviously, yeah, I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but I felt like he was really inconsistent when he did travel with the Outlaws or High Limit. Obviously they're super fast at Knoxville all year. They're super fast at Houston all year. You won Port Royal, but I did have him lower just because the inconsistencies, you know, like we talked about earlier with, you know, Baylog. I think it's kind of the same thing with him. I think next year, depending on what schedule they do run, I think you could see a huge, like, you know, these inconsistent nights. I think these inconsistent nights turn into really consistent nights. And I don't think they're going to lose any of their speed they had at Knoxville. And then obviously to figure out something on the final night at Port and destroy the field the way that they did, you know, they're onto something with their program. Obviously they can't hit it all the time, but they're starting to figure out more and more stuff the more they travel. And I think that means trouble for the rest of the sprint car community, because if they keep figuring things out like they did at Port, it'll just be a matter of time where they figure out what they got to do everywhere they go.
Jackson, before last year when we did this poll, Ryan Timms, we had him rated 28th in the country. Do you ever think we'll see another time in sprint car racing history where a guy generally considered not one of the best 15 drivers in the country the year before will win the Knoxville Nationals the next year?
I don't think so. I think what we saw Tim's do this year was very rare, and some could even, I'm not going to say once in a lifetime, because we saw Jason Johnson do the same thing a number of years back, but I kind of agree with what Sam said. Like, he ran 22 outlaw races this year. He had a win, which was Knoxville. He only had 2 top 5s and 10 top 10s. So I really think his inconsistencies were there. Like, the first night after Knoxville, they came to Jackson at a track, where that car typically goes pretty good at, and they were horrible, So I think inconsistencies fit him into the right spot. I think I actually had him at 7 on my list, but putting a lot of emphasis on the 2 big wins and then winning a lot at Houston and Knoxville. I would like to see them travel a little bit more, and I'd be curious to see how they'll be, because if I remember correctly, I believe they followed High Limit out to California last year, and I would like to see them do something similar to that to see if they can improve at some of those types of places. But I think where we have them is actually pretty fair.
JJ, you've known Ryan for a while. His father supports your racing a little bit. You had to be thrilled with Ryan's season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Ryan Timms fan. His dad's got me a couple suits through the years, and I've just always, been proud to represent him. Honestly, it's pretty cool. And man, I just, to see him take the steps that he did this year, just not only on half mile stuff, but just on like the national stage and stuff, and just honestly, just to stay as humble and as cool as he did, I thought was pretty damn cool. And I mean, for the way we have our list kind of laid out, he's the top rated guy that traveled the least amount, basically. Like, the only guy that's not national above him is Anthony Macri. And Anthony Macri's, like, in my opinion, the pretty much like the main true outlaw schedule of the country. He usually, not usually, but a lot of years he leads the country and wins, and he leads the country in races started and stuff. So he's kind of the definition of a true outlaw schedule. And, I think that I think that he's kind of right where he belongs on our list. And I see a trajectory with him where it's only going to continue to probably elevate until he ends up on a national tour.
I don't know Ryan super well, but like from an outsider looking in, I feel like in the past year he's kind of grown up a little bit. Like, he's handled the success well, and I think he's matured really well. And I think that goes a long way when you're out here, running all these races, and I think that helps you inside the car as well. So
I
props
think
to him.
I agree totally. I think that team deserves a lot of credit, like Shane and all those guys with that 10 car. Like, they kind of forced him to come in and really be a part of it and like live out there. And like, he's not just showing up and racing the car. Like, he's a real part of the team. And I think that kind of living that lifestyle and stuff is good for a kid like that to appreciate what he's doing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, he's going to school, right? Like, he's doing some sort of college classes, like all while he's racing, I think is what I heard from someone. So that's pretty impressive too, trying to balance all that as well.
I have no idea about that.
No idea.
I'm pretty sure he's doing some. I'm pretty sure.
School nerd.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He does wear glasses, so he probably does that school shit.
So JJ, you led us into it nicely. At number 7, we have Anthony Macri. Macri had
way to go, JJ.
That's what we call a segue in the business, boys.
79 starts, 16 wins, 40 top 5s, 54 top 10s. Obviously, he won the King's Royal. He also picked up 4 World of Outlaw feature wins and a High Limit feature win. That's about as impressive as it gets for a non-full-time national racer, wouldn't you say, Sam?
Yeah, he's badass. I think Anthony's, he's just, he went, the year was it, I guess whenever, he went to 7 BC and everybody thought that, he was terrible, or, he just had to be in his own car or whatever. But, last couple years, man, he's been stout. Like, he's proved everybody totally wrong, whatever they thought about him, or, whatever viewpoint they had on him. I mean, man, he's just been phenomenal. It doesn't matter where he goes. It doesn't matter if he's racing with the Outlaws, High Limit, Knoxville Nationals. It doesn't matter. He's been super good. The race he won at the Kings Royal was badass to watch. Man, I think he's they might have a lot of backing, but he's definitely a deserving guy. He puts in a lot of time and got a lot of passion for the sport, and it's cool to see a guy, come from PA and running PA a lot, but when he does travel, I mean, he's one of the guys no matter where he goes. It's very impressive. Most guys that leave Pennsylvania, do not have that kind of track record traveling the way he does, and it's impressive to see.
Jackson, what are your thoughts on Macri? Obviously, it's impressive that he's a local, but he also won with both national series.
Yeah, and like Sam said, the Kings Royal that he won was super impressive. And like honestly, what like impressed me is when he came out and like he ran the Wisconsin races with us. He came to Houston's and all that. He ran second at Beaver Dam. Some of these tracks he's never been to before. I felt like he had a decent showing at Knoxville in June. And then all through Houston, he was halfway decent. And, he won 4 outlaw races. He won Lincoln, he won Eldora Baps, and then Williams Grove. So, I mean, he's only going to get tougher at the tracks in PA, but like, it's pretty impressive that I feel like every year traveling, he just keeps taking a step and getting better and better. Him racing as much as he does definitely helps. And then having a guy like Joe Mooney as his crew chief is obviously super beneficial because Joe is a really smart guy. He has a lot of experience, and I only think they're going to get better.
JJ, do you have any additional thoughts on the guy who we have as the unquestioned best local racer in the country?
I mean, one thing to note about his year this year is like he did all that and he actually was out with an injury for I don't know how many weeks, but for a couple weeks.
At
So it's
least
like
3.
he still raced more than anybody else on this list, and he missed 3 weeks with an injury. I mean, the guy and he came back guns ablazing. I mean, the guy is an animal. Like it's super impressive and just commendable how much they race as a team. It's badass.
So number 6 on our list is a guy that I never thought we'd see out of the top 5 last year, but going into this year, Sam, we did feel like there was a chance with everything on his plate that we would see Brad Sweet drop a little. He's dropped to number 6. This year he had 67 starts, 5 wins, 38 top 5s, 51 top 10s, 4 high limit wins, and he beat the World of Outlaws for 20 grand at the Jimmy Boyd Classic. What are your thoughts on Sweet? And obviously now he's retired from full-time racing.
I mean, I think we hit it probably pretty good on him. I feel like, I feel like he's a top 3, top 4 guy if he's not trying to run high limit. Just basically, I feel like, he just got, Eric Prutzman was gone, and then now, crew changes, and then we lose the crew chief halfway through the year, and like that's a lot of stuff to overcome, man. Like when you're at the top level and you lose, say, Eric Prutzman, and then then you bring in a Ty Wolfgang, like it's just a new. He had to battle so much stuff this year, even with that, and then you add the high limit deal to the mix. I mean, it's too much for a guy like him for not just a guy like him, any guy to handle. So to still be 6 on our list and to be up against all the stuff he's been up against this year, that's impressive to me. I feel like if he never leaves the World of Outlaws, I still feel like Gravel's got a chance to beat him. But I think if they never left the World of Outlaws and they stayed with Prutzman and stayed the course, I still don't think he would be beat to date.
JJ, we had him at 3 last year. We did say he'd fall off. Are you surprised he fell off to 6, though?
Man, it's basically, I just really agree with what Sam said. He's got so much going on besides the racing. Like when he shows up and he's hyper focused on just getting the job done in the race car, it seems like he's still really, really good and really tough to beat. It's just there's only so many things you can overcome as a racer, and yeah, that's a tough one. There's nobody else on this list that got votes for, promoter of the year, and like, so it's just it's a tough situation he's in. I feel like, he's handling it as good as he can, but I guess I'm not really that like shocked that he fell to sixth. It's just it's it's tough sport, man. If you're not all in, somebody else is.
Jackson, there's actually surprisingly a decent history with guys at the top end of our sport. We're cutting back and doing well. The first name that comes to mind is Jason Myers. When he cut back, he was still very, very successful. How do you think Brad's going to be now that he's cutting back?
How is he going to be as a racer? I think he'll be fine. Like, he's obviously really talented. I'll be curious to see what his situation is going to be like when he does race. If it's going to be if it's going to be for a different car owner, if he's going to hop in different cars, if he'll what the situation's going to be. But, I definitely feel like Brad was dealt kind of a difficult hand going into the year, having a crew chief that with not a ton of experience, losing Eric, who I feel like is a top 3, top 5 wrench on the road. And guys like Eric are rare and hard to find. So I think with all the stuff with the crew changing halfway through the year, I felt like that was kind of a recipe for kind of a down year for Brad. And like Sam said, anybody trying to balance all the other stuff that he has going on, it's crazy. I give Brad a lot of props for being able to balance all of his different ventures and still be able to get the job done in a race car. That takes a different breed of person to be able to do that.
So we didn't actually have a number 5. Oh, you were going to say something?
Yeah, one thing about that too is you're asking how he's going to do. I think that he'll probably actually have a bit more success because he's just going to go to races that he wants to be at. And he'll, a lot of them will be there'll be really stiff competition, probably the high limit versus outlaw type of shows and stuff, but the crown jewel type of stuff. But even then, if it's stuff that he wants to be at or tracks that he's excited to go to, I think that'll, him being at the track and being excited to be there, I think you might see him actually, turn back and look really, really good in the race car again as well.
And him being fresh too,
exactly.
Not traveling a ton, he can kind of fly in, race,
pick his battles.
I agree with that for sure.
I think it'll be crew based, to be honest.
We don't even know what car
our
he's
sport's
getting in.
so crew
that's what I'm saying
too. It's you need a good guy.
I think it's going to be based on all of that.
So we don't have a number 5. We actually, out of the 5 of us voting, Carson Macedo and Aaron Reitzel finished tied for 4th with a 5.2 average on our list. We'll go with Carson Macedo first. I don't know, Jackson, would you call a season where you had I don't know, 75 starts, 12 wins, 39 top 5s, and 58 top 10s a disappointment? Because
that's so
I don't know. In some ways, I think Carson Macedo would be thrilled with that. But if you told Carson Macedo he finished 3rd in World of Outlaw points, I think he'd be disappointed.
I mean, I know for a fact he's definitely disappointed with how. No, I'm not going to say overall with how the season went, but with their points finish, I think. And Carson is a very much points-minded racer. I think the most disappointing part from their team is the mechanical failures that they had, and they had a handful more DNFs than they've had in years past. So I think they're going to really put an emphasis on cleaning that up. I feel like as a crew, they're one of the best all-around crews on the road. With Phillip and Robbie and Adam, those are all 3 really solid guys to have on your team. So I think if they can clean up a few of the mechanical things, they're right there. He's obviously going to win his races. He's good on all different types of racetracks. But I definitely think that you could call it a down year for the 41.
JJ, I mean, I just heard your reaction. 12 wins, and we're talking like it was a down year.
Yeah, those stats are so good. I think all those numbers that are on the good category are awesome and really good. I just think it was probably the bad nights that really hindered him and haunted him, which is kind of basically what Jackson just said. Just the nights where they weren't able to finish and stuff like that. Because for as much shit as Carson gets for being reckless and whatnot, he does not fall out of races very much. So, Carson's he makes sure to finish those races, especially in the 41 car, and so I think that that's a phenomenal season, and winning that many races is great. It's just, they want to win a championship, and I understand that and respect the hell out of what they're trying to do.
Andy was racing with a broken freaking leg the first couple
And
weeks
won.
of the season, and he
Won
won the
the
first
opener.
night
Yeah,
out. So I mean, that's
Yeah,
impressive.
he looked like hell walking
Us.
around in Florida. Like he was.
Oh, and yeah, it was not a good deal. Like he was in so much pain. Like, and he knew that when we went to the early in the year when he said, "Man, when we go to these tracks where I'm going to have to use a lot of brake, I don't know how this is going to go." So
I actually
He's tough.
I actually had a team complain to me that he was allowed to race Volusia after he won. Sam, obviously, what are your thoughts on Macedo's season?
I think it was a down year for their expectations. That team holds himself to a high standard. Phillips extremely smart. Carson's. We've had lots of talks with him about what he expects. What they're trying to do. Like I say, and they've been together for a while now. So, I think it probably burns their ass a little bit that the 83s kind of excelled past them. Where they felt like they were maybe on track to be the next guy that was going to contend for the championship. It's like with their team, I don't know. I kind of see them in the same spot again this next year. I don't see I don't see like a big, I don't know what big change they're going to make to close these gaps. You know what I'm saying? So, to get to the level of gravel and Kofoid, there's another step they have to take. And I don't know what they're going to do to accelerate to that spot. Like Kofoid seems like with their team, they've taken that challenge and they're challenging gravel pretty heavily now. And it just seems like the 41, they're in contention, but they're not breathing down the 2 and the 83's neck every night. They're that top 5 car that's in the hunt, but they're not, one of the guys that's going to be a contender, I think. I mean, I don't think anybody touches them for third and points, but I think they're ahead of everybody else by quite a bit, but they've got to make some changes somewhere to bridge those gaps, and I just don't know what that's going to be.
Now, the guy that was tied with Carson at 5.2 for us was Aaron Reitzel. Obviously, he had his season hampered by a crash at Eldora. Sam, you know him quite well. You've raced with him a long time, battled for championships. He had 57 races this year, 12 wins, 31 top 5s, 42 top 10s. 7 high limit wins, and he won the $100,000 at the Bob Weichert Memorial. At the start of the year, Sam, we said this guy was going to challenge for the high limit championship. There's probably a lot of people that scoffed at us. Doesn't surprise you at all, though, does it?
No, and honestly, maybe if he doesn't get hurt, maybe he wins. I feel like if he stays healthy, they're going to be good. I feel like the more he goes out on the road and races at that level, everybody, I think, a guy like Sanders has said, man, the amount of speed that car has is unreal. He's commended the race car, and Sanders has been in a lot of good race cars. Let's face it. So, for Sanders to talk that highly of Reitzel's race car, and then the driver that Reitzel is, I mean, I just think that they're gonna keep learning. That's their first year on the road with that operation. So for them to make the strides they made the first year, and now Sweet's gone, and then Courtney's kind of been out. So I feel like, the the guy that they're going to be chasing obviously is Rico, and obviously you can't think that, Rico's deal is going to be worse off going to Tony Stewart Racing. So I know they're going to have a little more backing behind them. Not that they need it anymore, but I still think Reitzel's got an outside chance of really doing some good. Like I think I'm not going to say he's favored to win the championship with High Limit, but man, I don't know who's going to overtake him in second, and I think he has a legitimate shot of winning because Rico had a lot of hiccups last year. Yeah, Rico won a lot of races, but he did not have like a storybook season like a Gravel had.
JJ, you've obviously seen a lot of Aaron the last couple of years at Knoxville. What do people maybe underestimate about Aaron that didn't realize he could fight for a national championship?
I just think his versatility. He can go to any type of track and get his car good at any type of track and drive good at any. He's absolutely badass on the short track stuff. He's ultra super duper aggressive. He knows how to keep his car straight and race with the wings in Pennsylvania and at Knoxville and stuff. He's just a extremely well-rounded race car driver. And I just, I think his race IQ is really, really high as far as trying to race for points and to win this championship. I think that he puts himself in good spots a lot more especially than he used to. Just it's hard to be ultra aggressive and kind of race for a championship. And I think he does it better than about anybody in our sport.
So, Jackson, we had a tie here at fourth. Who wins the tie, Carson Macedo or Aaron Reitzel?
Aaron Reitzel, in my opinion.
Why is that?
Like everyone said, the strides he made this year were unbelievable, and I think there for a good part of the season, I fairly confidently would say that he had one of the best handling race cars in the country. Like, they were unbelievable. I think with what Sam said with Rico, Rico had his peaks and his valleys, and I didn't see as much of that from Reitzel when he was racing. So, I really think they're going to take a big step. Reitzel, everyone kind of forgets, overshadowed from his injury at Eldora. He took a rock to the face like the second race out at Vegas, and that kind of put a damper on things. And he ended up winning, Paris and then Central Arizona, the next two races. So, I thought they were unbelievable. Like, their car speed was insane, and I really think they're the team to beat this next year on the High Limit Tour.
So I'll throw this out as an extra question that anyone can answer. Reitzel was unbelievable in time trials this year. And we've said a lot about the high limit format giving people that weren't necessarily on point a shot to be in the dash by being on the front row of their heat. Is Reitzel would he actually be more formidable on the Outlaw Tour where it's much more time trial based, do you think?
No.
Anyone can answer that.
I don't think so.
No, I think, when he put Reitzel ahead of Macedo, I don't think you can do that because Macedo won 12 fucking races. You know what I'm saying? 12 races. Reitzel's not winning 12 outlaw races in a year. He's not going to do that. Not saying he's not going to win 6, but he ain't winning 12.
I'm just looking up the stats right now. They both won 12 this year. Reitzel won 21% of his starts and Macedo won 16, just for whatever that's worth.
I think Sam's probably right. I don't think he wins 12 outlaw races, but I think, I don't know.
It's a hard question.
It's hard
It
because
is. It is hard.
It's hard to beat David. It's hard to beat Buddy. So, it's definitely tough. Dash draws are a factor, but I just think they were right up there with the two for the best handling car for that one stretch of the season. They were almost automatic there in qualifying.
Okay, and then how does he run? Okay, so let's go to like Placerville. How does he run if Sanders isn't in the car and say he's well enough? How does he run at Placerville? Yeah,
Very
I'm
fair
not
question
saying
as well.
I think Sanders did a good job for them, but I think if you put Reitzel in the car, they do on average better finishes. That's what I truly think. But just because the car is fit for Reitzel. Like when they went to Knoxville, they struggled with Sanders. And I think if Reitzel's in the car, they don't struggle there. I think they have a good time. Obviously, Reitzel runs really good at Knoxville, so I don't think they would have struggled at Knoxville at all with Reitzel in the car. And maybe at Placerville they don't run as good, but I still do think that the high limit schedule and the outlaw schedule are so different. The tracks that they go to, I think Reitzel still wins his fair share of races, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't win 12 on the outlaw tour.
So we had a tie at 4, but we also had a tie at 2. We had a 2.6 average vote for Rico Abreu and Buddy Kofoid. We'll do Rico first. Won his first national championship in a sprint car. He had won previously in a midget. The numbers were pretty impressive. He 71 starts, 21 wins, 39 top 5s, 56 top 10s. High limit champion, 13 high limit wins, 360 nationals champ, and he won the 126 grand at the Skagit Nationals. Obviously, an incredible year, best year of Rico's life. JJ, what are your thoughts on Rico Abreu's season?
Just seemed like he really took everything to the next level as far as like the execution goes, and just like you hear him break down races after, and his how in depth he is, and how he's always talking about the critical moments. And man, I love listening to Rico talk about the race and kind of what his thought process is and how he breaks it down. I just feel like his putting himself in good spots, you know. I mean, ever since East Bay last year, he kind of had a big talk about how he didn't want to put himself in spots like that when he should have launched out of the park, or at the beginning of, was that the beginning of this year? I think that was the beginning of last year, but
2 years ago.
Yeah, beginning of last year. So anyways, but
Zeb
since
Wise
then,
was still relevant in the sprint car world at that
yeah,
time.
back when Zeb didn't think that working was cool. It's crazy
Yeah.
how much he loves it. But anyways,
Eat a dick, Zeb.
the zebra's sleeping right now. But no, man, I mean, it's just the step that Rico's taken, I feel like, in his execution and his performance and everything he does to try to really minimize mistakes and analyze the race, I think is badass to watch, and to watch him get rewarded for it. It's super cool. You know, he's putting in a lot of work to be the best he can, and it shows. And, you know, I mean, obviously it's a whole team, like having Ricky Warner in your corner, and Zach and his hype man Brady is like it. You can't beat it, really. They're designed to win a championship.
Sam, obviously there's big changes in store for Rico next year. This year he got off to a bit of a slow start and then obviously came on strong. Do you expect a slow start next year as Ricky starts working his way through the program and figuring things out, or do you expect him to rip right from the start?
I mean, I think they'll be plenty good to start. You know, maybe not. Yeah, it really just depends what Ricky's trying at whatever time. You know, I think that's really all it has to deal with. I think Ricky has done so much for him. He's, you know, like, you know, JJ talks about how he breaks down a race, and I think Ricky brings all that to the table. I don't think there's a detail about the race car and the race strategy or any type of thing that Ricky doesn't make Rico be in tune with. And I think Rico's really taken it to another level on, you know, kind of, you know, being up for the challenge of, okay, well, I've got Ricky here. You know, there's really no excuses if we have him. So I need to do my part to make sure my side of the deal's handled. And he has. I mean, he's, you know, we talk about Hod making this transition from, you know, a different driving style. I mean, Rico has done that. they're not as good on the hammer down stuff anymore because Rico has taken a conscious effort to be better in certain situations. And I think, what Ricky does to race cars probably doesn't make them as good in the heavy stuff. But still, I mean, Rico has to respond the right way in these situations. It's not all just Ricky Warner, making the car super fast and Rico's just driving around in it. I mean, Rico's having to drive this thing and like it's kind of like we talked about, with the Kyle Larson deal, how much of this is Paul, how much of this is you? And he said he thinks they're 50-50. And I think these guys are probably thinking the same way. I don't think Ricky Warner's going over here, well, it's 80% me, 20% him. I think Ricky knows that Rico has to do his job and Ricky knows he has to do his job. And they're both doing that together. And and they have like their camaraderie of their whole team is unbelievable. Like, it seems like they all get along really well. And I think anytime you got three crew guys that are getting along well and the drivers all getting along well, it's a pretty deadly combination for any team. So, going to TSR next year, I think it's only going to make their situation better.
Jackson, any final thoughts on Rico's season?
Not really. I think they all pretty much hit it. I don't think there'll be much change with him going to TSR next year. I still think they'll be a contender. I would just like to see, as far as where they can improve, I would like to see them, when they struggled, they really struggled this year. And, I think that's where they can really improve on is try and make those really bad nights, not as bad. Turn those bad nights into top 12s or even maybe top 10, but bad nights are going to happen. But I just felt like when they were off, they were really off. But man, they were like, I agree with, the 50-50 thing. I think it's 50-50 with him and Ricky. I think they're a really good pair and the crew's great. So I think they'll have something to really build off of for next year.
Now, he was tied with Buddy Kofoid. Buddy Kofoid also had a 2.6 from us. Buddy ran 76 races, had 13 wins, 48 top 5, 64 top 10s, won $375,000 in just a few races at Houston's this year. He also won the Ironman 55 and took down $55,000 at Eagle with High Limit. A real breakthrough season for Buddy after I think we would have described last year as a breakthrough season for Buddy, would we not, Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, I think last year we saw in his rookie year post Knoxville, he was unbelievable, and they really came on strong there. I think, going into this year, they started out a little slow through Volusia, but then they quickly picked it up, Kennedale, Cotton Bowl, through Lawton, all those races. And then obviously when they got to the summer months, those are all tracks that they really excel at. I mean, Buddy really has a appreciation for his crew and the guys that he works with, and I really think that goes a long way, and they all get along really well. And I think where we could see a lot of improvement from Buddy is Knoxville, Eldora, Williams Grove. We could see a little bit of improvement from them there, and I think they'll be right there with David, And then the other thing I felt like they really kind of struggled with was qualifying, and I think he would say the same thing. They were able to race themselves into the dash more than they probably should have, and I think a lot of that was situational where they were able to do that. But yeah, I think if they can figure out maybe qualifying a little more consistently, they're going to take another step this next year.
Sam, obviously a breakthrough for him, but one thing he said in our interview that I didn't really hear anyone touch on was he said they have his car to where he doesn't even feel like he's in dirty air when he's in dirty air. So they are at an elite level with their race car. I think it's probably fair to say they'll start picking up at the places Jackson thinks they're weak. Is that a fair assessment? And what do you think of Buddy's year?
Yeah, I think anytime you're going, this isn't a team that's been together for a long period of time. So anytime you're going back to these places for several times, the crew chief's learning what Buddy likes at these places, and, the crew chief's learning what, these tracks are taking. And obviously, they made strides at Knoxville throughout the Nationals. I truly think that they are so close to winning an outlaw championship. I think it's right there. When you're a guy like David Gravel out on these guys, there's only so many things you can do to improve upon the year that you're already having. So to have these guys breathing down your neck the way that Buddy has been doing that, Buddy has the advantage on, like the types of tracks like Huset's and, different types of surfaces like that. Buddy has the advantage there, and David has the advantage at, maybe the wider, slicker, faster places, I would say. But it's not going to be too long where Buddy and those guys are catching up to them and on these other types of racetracks. And I truly think that at some point, David's going to have to up the ante somewhere. Their team's going to have to make some changes because, Buddy is getting better, so much better every time we see him. These last 2 years, like he's made, he had such a good rookie year, and then this year was unbelievable, the leaps and bounds they made. You're talking, a 2-point positions or whatever, and you're like, oh, and it's huge. When you're fourth and you go to second, that's a major change. And honestly, got to a point where it probably made Gravel sweat at some points. So they're going to have the same crew chief going back in, same driver. The Toyota development of their engines is only going to get better. I mean, I think these guys are, I don't know, man. I think Buddy's just getting better at, like, the core tracks, the Williams Groves, the Eldoras, and the Knoxvilles. Like, Buddy's going to start really getting good at these places. And when he does, like, it's going to be time for Gravel and them to find another gear, because he's coming, and they've got the momentum. Gravel might have 2 championships, but these guys have momentum on their side. They know they're a pain in Gravel's ass, and I think that's something the 2 car needs to be aware of, because these guys, telling you, man, the longer you leave these guys together, and they're going to get better, and they're going to keep getting better. And I think, they might not have a slow start this year. They're going to start off probably a little bit better than they did last year. And if they put that kind of pressure on Gravel from the start, it might be tough to beat Buddy coming down the stretch.
JJ, do you have anything to add on Buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that the whole sport kind of has seen coming for a while. Like, Buddy's just one of those natural talents. I mean, these cars they're not the hardest thing ever to drive, but most guys are sweating and tired when they get out, and Buddy has smaller arms than about anybody in the sport, and I've never seen him get tired. I've never seen him fatigue. Like, I mean, the kid's been in race cars forever, and like I said it when he was still, before they did the split or anything, like, I feel like he's the next guy that's going to be a dynasty type of champion with the Outlaws, just because of everything he's got. I just think that he's a really, really special talent. And I think he's kind of been overlooked because of guys like Larson, going to NASCAR and doing what he's done, and Corey Day fast tracking through there. But Buddy's been a slow and steady build for a long time now. And I mean, he's 24 years old, and he drives, he's just like he's like a 35-year-old veteran, I mean, like, I guess he's a little more like brash and young and wild than that, but like the amount of speed and like just knowledge he has in the race car for his age is like, everything is definitely trending towards him being a championship contender for like the next decade plus. Like, I mean, 10 years from now, Buddy's going to be at the age David Gravel is right now. It's like he's the next real deal in our sport. Like, I mean, not the next, but like, I see Buddy to win multiple championships in the next, 10 years for sure.
So I'm going to break the tie for us. I'm making the executive decision here. I'm putting Rico at 2 and Buddy at 3. And the reason I'm doing that is because in 3 years, when these guys look back on 2025, Rico will be happier with his 2025 season than Buddy will. Buddy will view it as a disappointment that he didn't win the championship, and Rico will view it as his first championship. So I'm splitting the difference there, and I'm putting Rico at number 2 and Buddy at number 3, which brings us to number 1, which I don't think is going to surprise anyone. JJ, David Gravel's season was incredible. 73 races, 18 wins. This is all according to SprintCarRatings.com. 58 top 5, 64 top 10s, World of Outlaw champion, 18 feature wins. Probably the highlight was the 83 grand at the Dennis Roth Classic, unless I missed something. But man, what a season, huh, JJ?
Yeah, I mean, just night in and night out, it's hard to do it much better than the 2-car. The whole team did it this year. I mean, from qualifying and just he'd go out early, he'd go out late. It looked like there was no speed left in the track. He would still put himself in a good spot. Like the way those guys can overcome what looks like it would be a bad situation, or what would be a bad situation for 75% of teams, is just and to do it as consistently as they do it, and honestly never really falter. It's that's how you become the number one. I mean, number one in the world, kind of on everybody's list. I mean, it's super impressive what they've put together here, and it seems like they're not really slowing down. I mean, they're just trending in an upward direction, also just getting tougher and tougher. I mean, he's kind of separated himself this year, I felt like, as far as he was definitely the class of the field. And I don't know if he went into coast mode or if Buddy's really closing the gap that much.
Jackson, you saw the guy do it night in, night out. What can you say about David Gravel's season?
I think after watching him for the amount of time that I've watched him being out on the road, I can fairly confidently say that he's the best qualifier of all time. Just no matter what the car is, he's always number one on the whole tour in quick times. Like JJ said, he could draw dead last, and you'd think there's no speed left in the track, and he's going to still go out and qualify front row of the heat race. Like, very rarely do you see David not on the front row of the heat race, and with the outlaw format, that's what you got to do. Get in front row of the heat, get in the dash, and the kind of rest is what it is. And I think David's got he's got a lot of confidence in what he's doing and what their team is doing, and that's only gonna get bigger and stronger as it goes. Like I mean, I think we talked about it on the Outlaw in Review podcast. I think David is guilty of kind of coasting and point racing at the end of the year, and I think it makes it look a little closer than what it is, or like what it could be. But and also those tracks at the end of the year kind of favor Buddy more than they favor David, I feel like. So, but I mean, they were hitting on all cylinders. I mean, from the word go at Volusia, they were on point. So not much more else to add, I don't think.
Sam, this is a question I think you'll like. David is now the 2-time champion. You just talked about how hard Buddy's coming after him, and we know Macedo's coming after him with a 12. It seems like Macedo wins over 10 races every year. You're the 6-time ASCS champion, and obviously that is not the World of Outlaw champion, but you do understand the pressures of being a champion and having to repeat better than most people do. Can you talk about what those pressures are and how impressive it is how David's handling them?
Yeah, like when you build something that those guys have built, there's not a lot of people that there isn't anybody that has the type of pressure a reigning champion's going to have, especially somebody like Gravel. I mean, they started the year out and it seemed like there was no way they're going to lose, and when you build the standard to that point, that's what people expect of you. And he knows what's expected of him. His car owner's seen him go out and win the championship 2 years in a row. The car owner's not going to hold anything back going forward. The crew chief, he knows what he's done. Like all these guys that are involved with this program, your wife, your kids, your mom, your dad, everybody. It's like an expectation that like I remember we had a 20-win season, and in that year, if we didn't win, I got a text message that said, "What happened?" We could run second, and it would be what happened. And I feel like those are the kind of messages he's going to get on a night he runs third. Well, what happened? And when you're in that position, to be able to handle that pressure and to still be able to deliver, that's what a champion is, and he's proven that. I still think he will win the championship next year. Even though Buddy's going to be coming, I still think they're going to win. Because he can handle that pressure. He has the proof. Like, okay, put Buddy in the point lead. Can he handle that as well as David's been able to? We don't know that. But David's proven it. He's proven it year after year so far. And I truly think that their team, their motor program, their whole package, is just, I think it's far beyond everybody else. And I do think he did ride toward the end of the year. I truly think he did that. I think that he's smart enough to know when to push, when not to push. And I think that with all that being said, I think he'll elevate when he's got to elevate. The only disappointment I have with their team is they didn't win a single big race last year. Like, I mean, the 83,000 was good, but, when we talk about the Kings Royal, we talk about Knoxville Nationals, National Open, all these big races, they didn't win any of those. So, like, if there's anything that they're not happy about, I would say they're going to key on some of those races this next year. I think that's something, when you're a team of their stature, there's always this race that got you. Oh man, we haven't won that race. I really want to win that race. We did everything else, but we didn't do that. I think that's going to be some of the goals they put in place this year. So I mean, and they've already been so fast at Knoxville. Like, I feel like they were the favorite, should have been the favorite to win. Maybe if not the favorite, but really close to being the favorite to win the Knoxville Nationals the last 2 years. And they didn't win either year, obviously. I don't think Todd Queering has won the Knoxville Nationals, has he? So I think for Gravel has, but I think that that's something that they're really they'll be really gunning for that. I think they'll really be gunning for Eldora as well. I think that those are places that they know they can win at. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I mean, the pressure that's put on you when you win as much as those guys do, it's not describable. No, but there's only the only people that know what that pressure's like is other people that are expected to win that much, and there's not very many people like that out there. So, like, I don't even think, like, on the high limit deal, there's not like an expectation of Rico. He just won his first championship, right? But gravel, it's like, oh man, he's got the best car in the country. He should win. That's the thought. And hey, and you're wrong on best qualifier. I don't know if you ever heard of the Brownsburg Bullet.
Joey Saldana.
Better than Joey, in my opinion. I just simply in the fact that no matter what car David has been in, he's unbelievable in qualifying. I think that means something.
You're too young.
Yeah,
you're too young.
Yeah, maybe. If it's not David, it's Joey. I do agree with you. And if it's not Joey, it's Paul. I put those three. Those are three that come to mind when I think of best qualifiers. And I also, to your point about them winning Knoxville, I mean, obviously that's number one on their list, getting Todd at Knoxville Nationals. And I know David's itching to obviously win another one with this team, but I mean, they really want to win Huset's too. Winning.
I just don't think that's something they're going to win. I don't think
it
fits their program. Their program's not set up for that. That's why they're so dominant in a lot of other places. That's going to be a Kofoid race for a while, I think.
Bill Baylog.
Unless they let Corey Day come race. If they let Corey Day in there, he'll win some of those.
Well, fellas, this ran pretty long. We planned on doing other stuff with this. We planned on doing all the other pole awards that come with the sprint car pole, but we're over 2 hours now. We don't even really have time to talk shit, so we're going to call it right here. Thanks for doing this, and we'll see you next week.